Okay, guys. So today we'll continue morphology. Okay. Last week we talked about different kinds of morphemes, right? A morpheme is a unit, a smallest unit that is meaningful, right? A unit that's small, but it has to have a meaning too. And you have two kinds of morphemes depending on whether they can stand alone or not. You have bound morphemes and you have free morphemes, right? Bound morphemes cannot stand alone, but free morphemes can stand alone. And in that sense, a free morpheme is a word, right, that we know. And then you have two kinds of bound morphemes, derivational, right, things that you add to words in order to change the part of speech most of the time, right? And you have inflectional morphemes, morphemes that you add to the word to indicate some kind of grammatical meaning, like past tense, present tense, ing, or adjective morphemes and so on, right? So that's what we studied last time. And we didn't finish, and we also talked about the concept of morpheme versus allomorph, right? Allomorph, right? A morpheme can look different, right, in different environments, in different positions, right? And we count them as the same morpheme because they have the same meaning, and you can explain the change through some kind of phonological explanation. For example, last week we talked about the past tense, right? The past tense morpheme in English, right? So the past tense morpheme is like this, right? And depending on where you have it, right? If you have it after a voiceless sound, then the past tense morpheme is going to be pronounced as a T, right? As in kicked, like this, right? Because the ed occurs after the k, which is a voiceless sound, so it's pronounced as a t, which is a voiceless. And you can explain that through what we call assimilation, right, in terms of voicing, right? And it becomes a voiced sound, which is a d after a voiced sound, okay? As in loved, because v is a voice sound, like that. And finally, you could add, if it's after a D or a T, you could add id or ud, as in wanted, right? Because it's hard to pronounce wanted, like that, right? So you add in a light vowel, as in the I or the schwa, so you have ud or id, like that. So you have at least 3 allomorphs of the same past tense morpheme in English, like this, okay? And we also look at plural, the plural morphemes in English, right? S or Z or is or us, and so on, okay? So that's what we looked at last time. And we did some practice last time, right? On number 1 of the handout. So we'll do that today too. We'll look at number 2, number 3, okay, on the handout from last time. So does anyone need a copy of the handout here? Okay. So you see 2 columns here, on the left hand and on the right hand. So there are 2 columns. So when you add a derivational suffix, we'll talk about the un, negative prefix, right? This is the prefix un in English, which means not, okay? So these are the stem, right? And the stem wait for something to be added to it, right? So you have comfortable, you have uncomfortable, pleasant, unpleasant, intelligent, unintelligent, and so on, right? Natural, unnatural, believable, unbelievable, sung, unsung, right? This doesn't mean, you know, to sing, okay? Unsung means not recognized, right? Unsung hero, an unsung hero is a hero that nobody knows, nobody has heard of, like that. Assuming, unassuming, fashionable, unfashionable, gracious, ungracious, like that. But when you look at, so this is in writing, right? And you look at the pronunciation here. So you can see that instead of pronouncing it as un, as in un, like that, right? Un. Now, when you add the derivational morpheme un to comfortable, people usually pronounce it as uncomfortable, like that, okay? Uncomfortable. So you see the N with a tail here instead of just the N, okay? And then pleasant, unpleasant, instead of just pronouncing it unpleasant in careful speech, people usually pronounce it as unpleasant, unpleasant, like that, okay? So N is gone, and now you see an M instead. Unintelligent, you have just un, same, right? Unnatural, instead of having two N's, right? Because you have the N from natural, right? From natural here, and you add another N. There should be, in theory, there should be two N's, but no, you have only one, okay? So, and then next one, unbelievable. When in fast speech, people usually pronounce it as unbelievable, unbelievable, like that. So you have M again, instead of just N. And then unsung, you have N, just regular. Unassuming, you have un, just regular. Unfashionable, regular. And then ungracious, ungracious, like that, N with the tail. So now, how many allomorphs do you see here? How many allomorphs? Allomorphs are variants, right? Different forms of the same phoneme, of the same morpheme. So this is the morpheme un. So how many allomorphs do we see? Different forms. So you see this one, right? N with the tail. So we have N with the tail here, like that. So that's one. What else? Unpleasant, right? So schwa with the M, another one, right? Oops. And then anything else? Un, right? Which is regular. And just right? As in this one, unnatural. Instead of unnatural, right? There should be two N's, right? From un and then from natural, two N's. But here you just see one. So it comes from the word natural, right? So N from un is gone somehow. Okay? So there are 4 allomorphs here. N with a tail, M, N, and then Now, can you predict where will you see each morpheme? Can you predict? You should be able to predict if they are allomorphs of the same morpheme. Where do you see the N with the tail? Where do you see the N with the tail? Which one has the N with the tail? First word, right? Uncomfortable, N with the tail. And then which ungracious. So what do they have in common? What do they share? The position, the environment, what do they share? Before K in the first one, right? And here before G. So you can say un before K and G. What do you call K and G? They are velar before a velar sound, right? Doesn't matter if it's voice or voiceless, right? Because K and G are voiceless and voiced respectively. So, an N with a tail, what kind of sound is it? What is the manner? What is the place of articulation? is nasal, right? And it's voice and velar too, right? So this is velar. So they match, right? Velar plus velar, right? So you call this, what type of process is it? Assimilation, okay? Good. So assimilation of place of articulation. So in other words, you can say the morpheme un changes to end with the tail when it occurs before K and G, right? Both of which are velar sounds because of assimilation of place. Now let's look at the second one, right? Where do you see M here? Look at the data that you have. You have unpleasant, right? And then unbelievable, right? 2 words. And can you list out the environment in which the M occurs? Before you look at unpleasant, so unpleasant P, and where is it? Unbelievable, so B, right? So before P and B. And P and B are what sound? Bilabial sound. Good. So this again is an example of assimilation of place. Because M is also a bilabial, right? So they match, right? The M matches the place of the P and the B, which is to be expected, okay? Good. And next one, let's look at just the schwa, the last variant. The last variant occurs in just only maybe unnatural, just one, right? So it occurs before an N, right? So schwa before an N, right? So from un to just this is called deletion, okay? Deletion. Because you have 2 of the same sound, then you delete 1 sound. Okay? And then finally, you have just the un, right? Which occurs everywhere, meaning it occurs before F, it occurs before a vowel, it occurs before an S, it occurs before a vowel, like that. So basically, the un occurs everywhere, a vowel, F or S, whatever, right? So it has more distribution than N with the tail, M, or the schwa, right? So the N before everything else, right? And you cannot see the pattern of that one because it occurs everywhere, before a vowel, before F, before an S, before other words, other sounds too. Okay, so this is how you recognize or how you predict an allomorph. An allomorph is just like an allophone, where you can locate which particular variant occurs. Okay. Now we have the third question. Which of these is the most basic form? The form that occurs most widely, right? The form that you will see more commonly than others, and the form that has more distribution than others. So you have to say it's un, right? Which is the basic form. So un is the basic form, okay? It's more common And then it will change to other forms, like it will change to N with the tail, it will change to M, it will change to just the schwa, depending on what sounds follow it, okay? So number 4, I didn't have the words for you, so you can add the following words. So, uncertain, unfathomable, ungarnished, and unpalatable, like this. So 4 words here. Uncertain, unfathomable, this is a schwa, ungarnished, and unpalatable. If you ever wonder how they are spelled, this is uncertain, this is unfathomable, this is ungarnished, and this is unpalatable. Palatable. Like this. Okay. Uncertain, unfathomable, ungarnished, and unpalatable. You know the meaning, right? Uncertain is you're not certain, right? Unfathomable, it means you cannot imagine, unimaginable, right? Fathomable is like deep, right? Deep. So unfathomable is something that's too deep to be able to understand, to be able to comprehend, to be able to imagine, right? Ungarnished, garnish is decorating, right? So ungarnished is not decorated. Palatable is pleasant, tasty, delicious, like that. So unpalatable is not tasty, not delicious, like that, okay? The food is unpalatable, like that. Unagreeable, like that, okay? So we have 4 words here. So do you think that based on the rules that we study here, are these words possible or not? So should we pronounce it, or do people pronounce it as uncertain, unfathomable, ungarnished, and unpalatable? So which one is or are possible and which one are not? The first word, is it good according to the rules above here? So you see that in this example of an unsung, you see the example unsung here? Unsung, the word unsung. You see that example? It has an S, right? But it's still an N, right? Because we say that un is the most basic form. So in this case, it has an S, so it's unlikely to be an M, right? So this one is not possible because it should be just uncertain, right? It should be an N, uncertain, right? Because M only occurs before a bilabial, and S is not bilabial, okay? And number 2, unfathomable. Unfathomable. Is it okay or not? Look at the rules above here and also look at the example words. It's okay, right? Because you have an example word that has an F, as in unfashionable. So it's an F and it still has an M, an N, right? So in this case, it's good, right? Unfathomable, because the N will occur everywhere except when it's the bilabial, when it's another N, or when it's a velar sound, okay? Everywhere else you have just an N, right? The regular. What about the next word? Ungarnished. Ungarnished. Is it good? So you look at the sound here. G is a velar sound. So you have an N with a tail, which is a velar sound also. So this is good. Okay, ungarnished. And the last one, I give you 10 seconds to think about whether it's good or not. Unpalatable. Is it good or not good? Not good, right? Because you have a P here, and according to the rules here, when you have a P, it should be an M, right, to match the place of articulation, so not good. So people usually pronounce it as unpalatable in natural conversation, okay? Unpalatable, like that. Unless they want to really, really be careful, and unless they want to really pronounce it, articulate every single syllable, they will say unpalatable. That's okay. But when they say it in real life, unpalatable, like that, okay? So that's how we distinguish different forms or different variants. We call these variants, okay, of the same morpheme, variant. A variant is a different form, okay? So variant, like that, okay? So an allomorph is a variant of the same morpheme, okay? Different form in different positions, in different environment, but yet you can predict where they will occur, okay? So far so good. I'll turn to number 4, exercise number 4. And then I'll give you, for this one, I'll give you maybe 7 minutes to work on it. Same process as we see in example 3. Now you have 2 columns, right? Column on the left hand and column on the right hand side. Okay, you have the stem on the left hand side, and you have the prefix x. In this case, the prefix x. X means out of, right? Out of, or out, or away from, same thing, okay? So out of, out, or away from. So that's x. So the prefix x, or the morpheme x, which has the meaning of out of, going away from, and out, has many allomorphs in English, okay? So I'll have you list out the allomorphs of the word, the morpheme x, okay? So from press to express, from acerbate, acerbate is to make sour, okay? To make sour. And then exacerbate, to make it even more sour. In other words, to make it worse, okay? Sour is not good in English culture, okay? So acerbate is to make sour. And exacerbate is to make it really sour, which means to worsen something, to make it worse. Cite, excite, exemplary. Exemplary is a good example of something, right? Like Taeyeon is an exemplary student, like that. A good example of something. Exemplary, a good example, okay? Communicate, right? Excommunicate, this is not good, because communicate is to communicate, right? To convey information to another person. Excommunicate is to be out of communication, right? To not speak to one person, right? So it's out of communication, in other words. Cede, and then exceed, pose, expose. Pose is to put, right? You know that. Cede is to go out of, exceed, to go out of limit, to go above, to go beyond the level. Pose is to put down, nota, right? Expose, to put it out so that everyone can see. Expose. Terminate, to stop, right? Exterminate, to stop completely, right? Meaning to stop the existence of something, to damage something. Exterminate is to damage something. Act and then exact, Now, can you list out the allomorphs of the X here? I'll give you 3 minutes. So you have to see the pronunciation, okay? So you can see the different allomorphs, okay? And then can you predict where you'll find each allomorph, okay? So I'll give you about 3 to 5 minutes. So you have to look at the sound after the X, okay? And that would be the clue for you. So start out with different allomorphs first. When you pronounce the X, you have KS or GZ, right? So don't forget the S and the Z. Okay. So how many morphemes, how many allomorphs do you have for the morpheme X? 4, right? So you have, in the first one, press becomes express. So here is 1, right? So X, right, X. And then in the second one, acerbate, you have exacerbate, right? Ex, right, like that. And then the third one, cite, becomes excite. So there should be 2 S's, right? But now you just have 1, which is the S from cite. So you have 1 allomorph here, ick. Okay. And then number 4, exemplary, same thing that we already listed out. Number 5, communicate, to excommunicate. So in this case, we have X like that, okay? And seed, exceed, same thing, which is IK. Terminate, exterminates, same thing, IKS. Expose, same thing, IKS. And then finally, exact, IGZ, exact, IGZ. So we have 4 allomorphs, okay, for the morpheme X. Okay. Now, can you see where each occurs? So let's look at, let's see, the one that's so obvious, which is ick, right? IK. IK occurs in what word? We have excite, right? From sight. So S is gone. Okay, so you have only ick. So the sound S is gone. So in that word, and also in exceed, right? In exceed. So in these 2 words, what they share is the fact that they both start out with an S. Okay, so you have the allomorph ick when it occurs before an S. Okay, a word that begins with an S. Okay, so that's the first one. Now, what else should we look at? Let's look at IKS, X. Okay, IKS occurs in maybe exterminate like that. Expose, and maybe the first word, express, right? So express, expose, exterminate. So IKS occurs before what sound? S, I'm sorry, not S. P, T, exterminate, right? And then S, right? Oh, no, I'm sorry, P, another P, expose. So P, T, and P. What do they share? P, T, and P, just so. P and T, what do they share? They are stop and they are P and T, they are stops and they are voiceless. And S is also a voiceless, right? So this matches, the voicing matches, right? So you can say that the S is a result of assimilation in terms of voicing. Okay? So voicing, assimilation. Now, if you look at IGZ, IGZ, you will see that the IGZ occurs before the vowel air, as in exacerbate, exemplary, the vowel air, and the vowel air. Okay? And in these cases, you can say that they are voiced, right? All vowel sounds are voiced. So, so you have a C which matches in terms of voicing. Same thing, voicing, assimilation. And finally, you have X. Where do you have X? Just one example, right? Before, as in excommunicate, before K, and it has to be a stress syllable too. So K is voiceless, right? K is voiceless. Therefore, you have an S, which is what you expect, right? S is voiceless, K is also voiceless, so they match in terms of voicing. But the fact that you have this vowel, which is a mid vowel, mid-front vowel, E, is because of the fact that it's stressed, right? So when it's stressed, you put some emphasis on that vowel, so it has the E instead of the I, which is a high vowel. I is a light vowel, just like a schwa. So when you have an unstressed syllable, you usually have ik. You usually have this vowel in unstressed, okay? But when it comes to the stressed vowel, you have the full vowel, which is X, okay? Like that, okay? So in words like extra, where the stress is here, extra, so you'll pronounce it as extra, like that, because the stress is here, extra. Okay? Because you don't pronounce it like extra, right? It's extra, like that. The most basic form seems to be the IGZ, okay? Because if it's followed by a voiceless sound, you will have the S in other places. Okay? So do you think examine, and this is the word, examine and expel. And exfoliate. Do you think that these words are possible or not? Examine, expel, exfoliate. Do you think that they are possible pronunciations or not, based on your knowledge? Examine is to investigate, right? To observe, to analyze, like that. Examine, like a doctor examines the patient, like that. Expel is to kick out. To kick out from somewhere, right? To kick someone out, to kick something out. So Pel is to disperse. X is out, so to kick that person out. Exfoliate. Exfoliate is to rub it off. To rub it off. To peel it off. Okay. To peel off. To rub off, like that. So off is X, right? So is the first word possible or not? Examine. Now you have to look at the sound after it, right? It's a vowel sound, which is a voice sound. So does it make sense to have a Z here? Does it, oops. Does it make sense to have a Z there? Yes, right? So because they match in terms of voicing. And then the stress is examine. So you have ik, which is correct. Okay, the first one. The second one, expel. The stress is here on the pel. So does it make sense or not? The word is spell, right? Oops, sorry. The word is pel, okay? So does it make sense to have a Z before a P or not? According to the rule that we study here. No, right? Because P is voiceless, so it makes more sense for this to be an S. And since the stress is on the second syllable here, we should pronounce it as expel, like that. Okay, expel. Okay? So they both match in terms of voicing. The last one, exfoliate. Does it make sense or not? No, right? Because this is an F, which is a voiceless sound, so it should be at least an S. So it should be exfoliate. Okay? So this is how we look at allomorphs. Okay? So let's look at the last example here, which is on the last page of the handout. And this is interesting because it could be confusing to people who don't know about morphology. Now we'll look at the morpheme bomb, or the word bomb, which is a free morpheme in English. Bomb is, you know, a bomb, right? A destructive weapon that people can use to destroy the city, to destroy other people. So that's the word bomb, which is a morpheme, a free morpheme. It can stand alone, it's a word. Now, you look at the word bomb and you look at how it's pronounced. In this case, you have bomb, just bomb. Notice that we don't pronounce a B. We don't say bomb, we say bomb, bomb. Okay? So B is not pronounced. Okay? So that's the word. That's the morpheme. Now, in the second one, you add the ED, which is the present tense, past tense morpheme. You have the D, right? So there are two morphemes there, the bomb and the past tense. So there are two morphemes. The third one, bombing. We say it bombing. So two morphemes again. ING is the progressive morpheme, right? So two morphemes here, bomb and ing, two morphemes. Okay. Still, you still have bomb, 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 right? B is not pronounced. Doesn't matter if you add the past tense, doesn't matter if you add the ing. Okay? Now, in this case, you have two morphemes, bomb and then the plural morpheme. So here, still bomb. Okay? Next one, bomber, a person who bombs someone else, or a person who bombs the city. Two morphemes again. Is a person who. You know that, right? Now, but it seems in the last two words, we have bombardier. You remember D-I-E-R? That's where the stress is. Bombardier, right? So here you have two morphemes. Again, right? You have two morphemes. bomb, and then a deer. A deer here is a noun suffix, okay? Which means a person who does something or a thing that does something, bombardier. And then in the last one, bombastic. Bombastic or bombastic, doesn't matter how you pronounce it, schwa or I is fine, doesn't matter, because it's not stressed. So the bombastic, you have two morphemes, bomb and then astic. Astic, sorry, I need to make this correction to a T, okay? Astic means an adjective suffix. So you make it into an adjective, bombastic, okay? Bombastic means sounding like a bomb or sounding very loud or sounding pretentious. So very loud or very pretentious, right? Because metaphorically speaking, when someone make a loud announcement, make a loud noise, he could do that in order to attract people's attention, to be pretentious, okay? So it seems that we want to figure out the two allomorphs of bomb. Bomb without the B, and the other one is bomb with the B, okay? So there are two allomorphs here, as you can see. Bomb, like this, without the B, and bomb with the B, as in bombardier and as in bombastic, okay? In other cases, you have just bomb instead of bomb, okay? So where do we find bomb and where do we find bomb? So you have to list out the environment, right? You see bomb where? Before the second word, D, the third word, ing, Z, and like that, right? And you see bomb, B, before a deer, and before Aztec, like that. So based on these two observations, we say that they are observations. Based on these two observations, how do we distinguish the environments though? Because if you say, well, we have the M without the B before a consonant, before a vowel, voice, vowel, like that, but that would repeat, right, with a deer. Is also voice and vowel. Is also voice and vowel. So you cannot use the vowel here or the voice schwa here as the clue because they cannot be the same, right? Two environments must be different in the case of allophones and allomorphs, right? So you have to think further. It's not the vowel or it's not the consonant that affects it, it's something else, right? So what do we have? If you look at the list of words here, what do we have that make them, what do we have that makes them so different? In one syllable word, the stress is there always, right? The stress cannot be somewhere else. The stress is here, right? In all of the bomb without the B. The stress is on that word, on that allomorph itself. But when you have the stress elsewhere, as in bombardier, the stress is on deer. And last one, bombastic, the stress is on astic, right? In this case, the stress is not on the word bomb itself. So you need the B there. So this may be the clue for you. So we say that what they do not share is the fact that the stress is after the word or the morpheme bomb. If the stress is after that morpheme bomb, it would change into the allomorph bomb plus the B. Okay. So when the stress is after the morpheme bomb, it will change into bomb. Okay? But notice that it doesn't have to be directly after. Okay? If you look at the example words here, it doesn't have to be directly after. This one, bombastic, is directly after, right? Next to. But in bombardier, there is one vowel here in between and then the last one. As long as it's after, it's okay. Doesn't have to be immediately after. Okay? And the third question is, which form is more common? We can say that the bomb without the B is more common. Okay? So if I have this on your homework or on your next quiz, you should be able to do it. So to distinguish, again, to summarize, to distinguish one allomorph from other allomorphs, you have to look at the environment and you look at the sound after it, including the stress pattern of the allomorph. Okay? And you should be able to tell, you should be able to predict where an allomorph occurs. Okay? So, questions? If no question, I want to segue, or I want to move into the PowerPoint file from last week that we didn't get to finish. So last week we talked about allomorphs, right? Plural and past tense and stuff like that. Now, one minor topic that I can talk about today, and we'll finish this off next time, and we'll start syntax next time, is typology. Okay, typology, you know, typo is type, right? A kind or a type or a kind. OG is like study of or knowledge about. So typology is the study of different kinds of morphology system. The study of different kinds of morphology system. So if you group world languages, you know, there are about 5,000 to 7,000 Ochon, right, or Chilchon languages in the world. If you group them by their morphological system, you have two major groups of world languages. You have the synthetic group and you have the analytic group. Okay? The synthetic group includes languages in which the syntactic relations are expressed by inflectional morphemes rather than by word order. And examples include Latin, German, and Korean. So to paraphrase, this means that a synthetic language has many morphemes per word. A synthetic language has many morphemes per word. Okay? So an example is Korean, right? So for example, if I may give you this example, 학교에서는 공부해요. Right? So in this case, you see a word. Let me make it big. See this word. You have so many morphemes. 2 morphemes, right? Hak is one, kyo is one. We talked about that. And you have esa, which is a postposition, just like preposition in English, right? So at or in or where, whatever, right? And then nun, which is the emphasis morpheme. So that one word, you write everything together as one word. But you have 1, 2, 3, 4 morphemes like that per word. And then this, you have so many morphemes as well, right? This is the politeness morpheme, the present tense morpheme, and the stem of the word like that. But in English, the same thing we express is as I study or I'm studying at school like that. So you have one word here, which is a preposition, right? But in Korean, you group everything, you attach everything into just one word like that. So we call this a synthetic language because it has many morphemes per word. Okay? But English is a different type. We call that analytic, right? Analytic is you have just not so many morphemes per word. One word is roughly one morpheme. Okay? Mostly, I mean, generally speaking, in English we have things like, you know, let's say exceeded like that. We have 1, 2, and 3 like that. We have things like that, but not as much as you do in Korean. So we say that English tends to be what we call analytic language, right? Which is the second type, analytic, which means we usually express one concept through one word. At is one preposition, right? To indicate location. School is another concept, so you use another word for it, right? We don't group them together like that, okay? So coming back to the handout, to the PowerPoint here, you have 2 different kinds of language that are so different. Synthetic language and analytic. So synthetic is a language that has many morphemes per word, especially grammatical morphemes like preposition, esa or a like that, or nun, nun like that, ika, right? Kristaka like that, right? So you attach the morpheme per word, right? But in analytic language, just like Chinese or English, generally speaking, you use one word for one morpheme, right? And you don't stick morphemes together. And we call this, another term for it is isolating language. Isolating language. Isolating language. Isolating meaning you use an isolate word for a concept, preposition or tense, whatever, right? Okay. Now, within the synthetic group, you have 2 more minor types. You have the agglutinative languages and you have fusional languages. Again, the synthetic language group is those languages that have many morphemes per word, right? You tend to stick many morphemes together to form a word. But within that group, you have 2 minor groups. The first minor group is agglutinative language, right? Glue is like you attach using glue, right? Several morphemes attach to a stem and each morpheme has a specific meaning. Each morpheme tends to retain the shape. Each morpheme tends to retain, to keep the shape, and you can recognize each morpheme like that. Okay? So 어디가 세요, right? Where politely are you going, like that, right? So 가 is the verb, one morpheme there. 세 is the honorific morpheme to show respect to the person you talk to, or to show the respect to the subject of the sentence. And then yo is the politeness marker. So each one is yo, se, ka, like that. And you stick them after another, like that. And you can recognize like that, right? If you want to stick se into other words like 아세요, do you know? So it's still se. It doesn't change the form, like that. So we call this agglutinative, right? 내가 다니는 학교, like that, right? So 는 and then 학교, like that. So each morpheme retains the shape, right? Whereas in fusional languages, you know, fusion, the shape is fused together. You cannot recognize the distinct shape when they combine the morphemes. As in Spanish or in French, in Italian, for example, like the verb hablar, to speak, you have different conjugation, you have different forms for different personal pronouns. I speak is hablo, you speak hablas, he or she or it speaks habla, like that. So if you look at the root, you recognize habla as all the roots here, right? But when you look at the ending, o means I, like that. But you speak as conveys the word you, right? But the fact is that you cannot use as with other things, okay? Blah, is like he or she or it, like that. But the morpheme itself doesn't mean it or she or he, like that. Unlike here, it means honorific. Unlike here, it means politeness, like that. So we speak, like most here, you cannot use most to mean we, like that. So for fusional language, everything fused together and you don't see the morpheme boundary. So you cannot separate as to a and s. You cannot separate most to m or s, like that. Okay? Or here, I spoke, which is the past tense, and then I, first person. You just see one sound, e, right? But why is not o plus past tense, like that, right? In Korean, past tense is double 시옷, right? Like that. You can recognize it like past tense. But here, where's the past tense and where's the personal pronoun? It's fused into one sound, e, like that, right? This present tense and personal pronoun fused into just one sound, o. You cannot separate o into like half o, like that. You cannot do that. But in agglutinative languages, you can do that. So both types have a lot of morphemes per word, a lot of concepts per word, like this. O conveys first person and also present tense, like that. Indicative mood, statement, not question, like that. But the agglutinative, you can separate different morphemes, and each morpheme means different thing, and you can reuse those morphemes elsewhere. Okay? We are out of time. Tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, I'll come back to finish this off. And don't forget to bring the syntax PowerPoint file because we'll just start syntax next time. Okay? So this is, or maybe next time, this is where morphology ends. Okay? And for quiz 2, which is in the first week of November, we'll focus on phonology and morphology. Okay?